Sybil, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. So today's video is a highly requested, highly awaited video, which is how I aced the TOEFL reading section. So the reason why this video took me longer to plan is because the reading section is fundamentally different compared to the speaking or the writing section. So unlike the videos I've done before, I can't give you guys a template for the reading section and tell you that it's going to dramatically increase your score. Reading is a skill that you cannot shortcut your way to. So you have to build it day by day, step by step. So today, instead, I've curated a list of habits and tactics that I believe can definitely improve your score in the reading section and allow you to take on the reading section with confidence. And before we start the video, I want to remind you guys to not be afraid of the reading section, because the reading section is going to be your best friend. It's going to be your ally. And this is because reading is something that when you put in the time and effort, you will definitely reap what you sow. So it's one of those sections where you can make sure if you're working hard at it, you're going to get the points, and it's going to help you get that higher total TOEFL score that you're dreaming of achieving. So I hope that after this video, you can see the reading section in a different light and approach the TOEFL exam with preparedness and confidence. So let's get into it. So starting off, we have the fundamentals. So these are things that you want to do before you even start tackling the practice reading section exams. The first thing you want to do when you start studying for the TOEFL reading section is familiarize yourself with the question types. Even if you're very confident in your reading skills and you think you have this section in the bag, definitely still review the question types beforehand, because TOEFL has a few different types of questions they like to ask that may catch you off guard. I'm not going to get into the details of each type of question in this video because I believe you guys can do that homework yourself, but I am going to link some resources that explain these questions down below, so definitely check it out. By familiarizing yourself with the questions, you're going to be taking on the TOEFL exam with so much more confidence and so much more readiness, so make sure you do this step before going on anything else. So the second fundamental is the most obvious one, but be an active reader. So like I said in the introduction, reading is not something that you can shortcut yourself around. You need to be reading on your own time to be able to do well reading for the test. So definitely make sure that you are an active reader. Of course, it's nice to diversify the materials that you're reading from, but I think that if you're someone who doesn't really like to read, it's a good idea to not scare yourself away from the beginning. So what I mean is, if you like nonfiction, stick to English nonfiction first. And if you're into fantasy, stick to English fantasy first. Make sure that you're reading a genre that you like, that stimulates your urge to read more, instead of, let's say, reading boring textbook materials that you really dislike, because that might shut you off from reading completely, and of course that is not what we want. So make sure you start your reading journey with things you like first, and then when you're ready, you can diversify. Down below, I'm gonna link some books I really like for different English level students, so make sure you check those out if you need some recommendations. Building on top of that tip, the next fundamental is create your own personal dictionary. So vocabulary is so important in reading because it increases your reading speed as well as your reading comprehension. Two things that will enable you to the path of success. When you read, make sure that you're highlighting words that you don't know, checking them on the internet or the dictionary by hand, and then writing them down in a central location that you can call your personal dictionary. You can do this in many different ways. You could jot it down on your phone, jot it down on a notebook, keep it on a Google Docs file, or the last way that I like to do it is keep the vocabulary words in Quizlet. So if you guys don't know, Quizlet is this app that allows you to create flashcards on your phone. And I think that it's a really nice way to test your skills. So let's say you find a few vocabulary words that you didn't know, and then you key it in to your Quizlet and memorize them. So let's say after a week, you decide to quiz yourself, and you can do that on Quizlet. So it's a very convenient way to start building up your personal dictionary, and it's also very portable. So let's say you're waiting in line at the doctor's office. You can whip out your phone and start quizzing yourself on these new learned words, and it's just a very effective way to get that vocabulary in your brain. So the last fundamental going into the reading section is actually a top secret of mine. I don't think anyone on the internet has ever talked about this tip before, so I'm here to share it with you guys today. When you're reading for TOEFL, read as if you're role-playing. Now, what in the world does this mean? I'm going to explain it to you. A lot of test takers, when they sit down to do the TOEFL reading section, they feel very overwhelmed and very stressed out, because TOEFL is basically asking you to sit down and read academic articles for 54 to 72 minutes. And that seems like a long time. And since all of the articles are normally academic papers, it seems very tedious and sometimes boring. But in reality, each TOEFL passage is only 700 words, and that's actually not a lot. When you're reading a book that you really love, 700 words goes by in a second. In a blink of an eye, it's over. And I'm gonna show you guys an example. So this book right here, The Untethered Soul, is one of my favorite books. And I actually counted. This is what 700 words looks like. Can you believe that? That's 700 words. When I'm reading on my own time, 700 words or 2 pages goes by in a blink of an eye. And the reason why time flies by so fast is because you're completely immersed into the book. You're completely immersed into the author's world. So what you want to do in the TOEFL exam is trick your brain into thinking the same thing. So when TOEFL gives you a paper on, let's say, paleontology, you're gonna look at those 700 words of paleontology and think to yourself, at this moment, I'm a professional paleontologist. I'm like Ross from Friends, and I'm ready to take on this paper. Think of it as you are also a leading professor in another university, and you're about to understand this new topic so you can critique it and build on with your own research paper. I promise it'll make the reading section feel so much easier and so much more entertaining. Even though it sounds like a very silly idea, I promise it works. It definitely works. So try it on your own time, and you're going to see how you are so much more engaged with the content and understanding the whole passage a lot better. So those are the 4 fundamentals I wanted to share with you guys. And with that said, we're going to get into the real tactics and the tips. So if you want to ace the TOEFL reading section, there are 2 things you need to upkeep. The first one is quality, and the second one is quantity. In the sentence, by quality, I mean your reading comprehension skills, and in quantity, I mean your reading speed. So both of these crucial in getting you that high score. So starting off with quality or reading comprehension. So I have 2 ways I believe you guys can practice upping this skill. So the first way is reading out loud. Now, it sounds a bit crazy, but I'm going to explain to you how this works. So when I was younger, I studied for a few years in the States, and I remember in middle school, every single day in English class, our teachers would ask us to read out loud, be it the textbook or the novel. We had to read it out loud in front of the entire class. And they asked us to do this for a reason. Reading out loud allows you to sharpen your focus, and it gets rid of any distractions when you're reading. You know that feeling when you're reading and then you read 3 sentences and then you think to yourself, what in the world did I just read? Because I do not remember anything. Reading out loud can allow you to prevent this from happening. And you might be thinking, but Sybil, I can't read out loud when I'm doing the TOEFL exam. No, you can't. But if you start reading out loud the months or the weeks before your test, it will train your brain to sharpen its focus and really hone in on those words that are appearing on your paper or on your screen, and get rid of the distractions that might be stopping you from comprehending the entire paper. By reading out loud, you're not only just concentrating on the meaning of the word, but also the pronunciation. And the compound effect of this action really allows you to retain that information and comprehend better. Over time, you can start mumbling the words, murmuring the words, or even just mouthing the words. In the end of the day, they all have the same effect of really doubling the possibility of you comprehending the passage you just read. The next tip for improving your reading comprehension is highlighting key sentences. TOEFL often asks you questions about summarizing contents you just read, or even some common themes you see throughout the entire passage. And if you struggle with this, highlighting and taking notes during your practice exams will really help you out. Although you're not allowed to do this on the actual test, when you're practicing and you're highlighting the main themes or the main ideas that you're seeing in a passage, over time it will build on your comprehension skills and allow you to find key details within a reading material much faster. So make sure you're doing this when you're practicing your reading section tests. Now that we've nailed quality or reading comprehension, we're going to move on to quantity or reading speed. So the first tip I have for this section is actually the most important tip in this entire video. Skim the passage first. So the first time you're reading a certain passage, do not waste time trying to look at the details, because I'm going to be the one to break it to you. When you're reading a passage for the first time, you're not going to retain most of the information that you read. It's just impossible. So trying to read the passage in detail on your first read is a waste of your time. Your goal upon the first time you're seeing a certain passage is making sure you're taking note of the main ideas as well as the main themes. So these two things are what you're looking out for. By the end of the passage, you should be able to organize in your brain, what have I just read? What is the gist of this article? Afterwards, when you actually start getting into the questions, TOEFL will provide you with the certain paragraph it's asking you about on the screen along with your question. So that is when you do a deep dive into that certain paragraph and look for the nitty-gritty details that will lead you to the answer of your question. By allocating your time this way, it'll really help you pick up that reading speed and ensure that you're not wasting time trying to understand every single little thing about the passage upon first read, because 700 words, remembering everything in those 700 words, is a tough task that I don't even think English professors could do. So don't put that pressure on yourself. Skim the passage first and then read into the specifics later on when you actually start doing the questions. Building on top of the first tip, my second tip is actually don't reread the questions. And this specifically applies to when you're doing your first passage skim. A lot of people, when they're reading these TOEFL passages, they get very anxious about not completely understanding every single sentence in the passage. So what they do is they reread the same sentence like 3 times, 4 times, or even maybe 5 times. Retaining everything you read upon first read is very hard, and it's a task you don't need to do. So what I advise is that when you scan for the first time, don't reread any of the sentences. Consciously tell yourself that. Just do a quick skim, go to the next page, start answering questions, and that's when you can read in detail the paragraphs and reread sentences that you feel like are crucial clues into answering the questions at hand. My next tip is also very important. It is to keep track of time when you're practicing the reading section. When we're doing a test, obviously we want all of our answers to be correct. But in the TOEFL exam, it's also very important to ensure that you're actually finishing the entire exam. This means that when you're practicing the TOEFL reading section at home, not only are you making sure that your answers are right, but you're also keeping your speed in check. I have a friend who I think is very, very proficient in English, and when she was practicing the reading section at home, she never ever timed herself. So when she started doing the practice exams, she had a very tough time making sure that she was finishing the entire reading section on time. This is because without timing herself, she didn't know the right test pace. So make sure that you're timing yourself whenever you're doing the reading section. If you realize that it takes you over 18 minutes to finish one passage and 10 questions, then you're gonna need to start setting timed goals for yourself. For instance, if it takes you to read one passage and answer 10 questions in, let's say, 20 minutes, then tomorrow you're gonna tell yourself, I have to do this in 19 minutes and 30 seconds. Continue to set these timed goals for yourself until you're well under 18 minutes. That way you're sure that you're going to be safe on test day. The last tip I have for reading speed is actually hand pacing. And it's a tactic that helps you practice reading a lot faster. So remember when you were a little kid and you were just starting to learn how to read? So we would take the book in our hands and put our fingers on the words, and then we'd follow our hands as we read through the entire book. So this tactic is called hand pacing. And you might be thinking, well, Sybil, isn't this like a little kid tactic? Why should I be doing this when I'm preparing for TOEFL? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. Although it seems like a silly little practice, when you're following your hands as you read, it's sharpening your focus so much more. And this obviously results in better reading speed. So when you're preparing for the TOEFL reading section, use your hand as a guide as you're reading through the passage, and once you feel like your brain is ready to handle the passage on its own, you can let go of the hand and just read the passage on your own. But other than hand pacing, going back to the fundamentals, the best way to just improve your reading speed dramatically is by reading more. So never forget that and actively read whenever you can so that you can get the highest score you possibly can achieve on the TOEFL reading section. So that is the end of today's video, and thank you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up so I know to make more videos like this one. Or if you have any other TOEFL related videos you'd like to see, please comment them down below so I know what to make. Or any questions you want to ask about the reading section, also tell me through the comments, please. And subscribe so that you can catch the newest TOEFL content that I put out. If you want to watch how to ace the speaking section, the writing section, or TOEFL in general, I will have those videos linked down below in the cards. And lastly, make sure to check the description box because I always like to link resources I think are very helpful to you guys down there as well. So I hope that you guys can take advantage of that. And best of luck to all my test takers out there. I know how tough it is to study for this exam, but just you getting through this entire video shows your dedication, shows your persistence. So I believe with your time and effort, you're going to get the best results that you can achieve. I will see you guys in my next video.